Hello everyone, warm welcome. It's an honour to have you here at the Saphira Centre of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It is an honour to have you here. Thank you for joining me once again. Be sure to find me over on Patreon if you're wanting access to my powerful occult initiatory systems and practices. Lots of resources are on this Patreon, such as guided invocations, many consecrated rituals for various alchemical purposes, full initiatory systems through the Sephiroth, the Tree of Life, the Qliphoth, the Tree of Death, the Necronomicon gnosis, which we'll be talking about today, and many other things, with new content uploaded multiple times each week. You can gain access at just £20 per month. Second link in the description. I look forward to seeing you over there. So today we're going to be speaking about a core aspect of the Necronomicon gnosis, and that is the Great Old Ones. Now, the Great Old Ones are supposed to be seen as different to the outer gods. People get them confused. The outer gods are beings that dwell outside of the multiverse itself, infinite primordial void intelligences that are not bound to any pre-constructed multiverse, whereas the Great Old Ones dwell within cosmic order and within cosmic law itself. The Great Old Ones normally take on the form of big primordial beings that are within our multiverse itself, but are either sleeping, imprisoned, or buried beneath something symbolic. For example, the primary Great Old One, the most well-known Great Old One, is Cthulhu, and this being is said to be asleep beneath the ocean symbolic of the deepest aspects of the unconscious mind. Now, how these really differ from the outer gods is that these beings are within the multiverse itself, whereas the outer gods represent forces that can rip apart the multiverse as you know it and reconstruct something bigger and better from the ashes. The Great Old Ones are more about triggering deep ancestral memory. And when I say triggering deep ancestral memory, I mean healing your generational line, but also gaining gnosis into ancient primordial extraterrestrial intelligence that is within your genetic blueprint. The Great Old Ones basically represent what humanity was before our society as we know it, okay? Before our given species, way before, long before, the Great Old Ones in the Lovecraftian mythos were said to rule everything. When it comes to our own self-development, when you're tapping into the Great Old Ones, you are undergoing a significant alchemical process whereby you are triggering and reactivating dormant DNA and ancestral energy that links back to ancient primordial intelligence. The purpose of this is to greatly transfigure the human body and energy field into something that is far more than what we have been taught humanity actually is. The Great Old Ones, like any spirit, any intelligence, are going to represent core aspects of the human psyche and core aspects of the human body and nervous system as well. So when you tap into them, they activate core aspects of the body and dormant powers that have been within you for eternity, okay? Literally powers that you were born with, but you are not actually aware that you have because of societal level programming. So the Great Old Ones have an extremely dissolving effect on societal level programming, on the mundane world. Working properly with the Great Old Ones, particularly if you tap into their energies to, say, transcend the planetary spheres, or other types of path workings like that, or even just through invocation, you've got to understand that this is quite an advanced pursuit. Many people don't move on to Lovecraftian gnosis until after they've done the Qliphoth, or as they go into the deeper aspects of Qliphothic initiation. What you will find is that if you are interested in demonolatry work and you are interested in Qliphothic work, then workings with the Great Old Ones will basically move into your field naturally as you transcend the different spheres and move to the realms that are beyond the tree, particularly if you work through Enoch Petrocelli's method or Enoch Petrocelli's system, which is the Stellar Outlands, which kind of blends Lovecraftian gnoses with the Clithothic gnoses as well. So when you are tapping into these forces, you are making a commitment to transfiguring your system in a way that is unlocking your deep ancestral potential. This is evoking powers that have been lost within your generational line, but also within your primordial generation as well. Soul level remembrance of who you actually are and the resurrection of various powers that have been exiled and repressed. What this means on the psychological level is tapping into some of your deepest child parts and learning how to merge with them and access the power that is within them. My view on the energy of the Great Old Ones is that this energy is very active when we first come into this world, and we are basically operating with these powers as children. But my view is that through the societal level programming, these ancient intelligences get completely repressed and reduced to storybook characters, at which point we then lose touch with our true nature entirely. And these things, particularly the Great Old Ones, are referred to as more demonic-like intelligences, dark matter intelligences, dwelling underneath the ocean and in places like that, forgotten lands, forgotten places on the earth, buried cities, and things like that. All this is really referred to, or all this really symbolizes, rather, is your forgotten aspects, okay? The forgotten parts of humanity that we have learnt don't have a place within our mundane world. So you don't want to work with the Great Old Ones unless you are committed to shattering the mundane consciousness as you know it and actually exploring who you are beneath who you have been told that you are. So we're going to be diving in to the Great Old Ones in depth, speaking specifically about one, Cthulhu, but I'm also going to be touching on some of the others as well, exploring their different powers, their nature, and ultimately how you can tap into them in a sustainable way to fuel your alchemical process. So definitely stay tuned. So how I would describe the interaction with the Great Old Ones is a bit like you're going back through your generational line to the original source that is holding that generational line together. And as you're doing that, you're going back through all of your karmic imprints that you are holding onto that are resonant with your past lives. It's literally like you're going back through a particular current of your generational line, according to the spirit that you're interacting with, finding the source, and then basically tackling the entire generational line from its source. It's literally like you're going right back to the heart of your generational trauma, prodding the beast, waking it up, which then triggers a chain reaction through the entirety of your generational line. It's a bit like you go through a particular current, you prod this being, it wakes up, and then it awakens this dormant ancestral energy and brings loads of trauma to the surface, more so than other dark matter energies, okay? All dark matter energies are going to bring repressed trauma to the surface. It's the nature of them. They resonate with the deep unconscious. But these beings are all about triggering deep ancestral memory and the purification / alchemy and integration or individuation of generational trauma so that you can tap into the ET potential that is actually beyond it. So in order to trigger this remembrance, this deep remembrance of your true origin that is represented by the Great Old Ones, you have to prod that beast which is sleeping at the source of your generational line. And this is the case for everybody. Now, the type of purification process that will unfold will highly depend on multiple factors. Your own blueprint, what you are ready to process and integrate, your own individual karma, the specific Great Old One that you are tapping into, and what method you are using to tap into the spirit. For example, if you are evoking the spirit, evoking a Great Old One, which I find to be a very challenging act personally, because you're invoking forces or evoking forces, bringing the spirit down separate from you, that are so vastly, they don't really have a form that is by any means comprehensible to humanity in any way. Whereas if you tap into a demonic spirit or invoke a demonic spirit, it may come through in a particular form. I feel like it's harder to get the Great Old Ones, or the Outer Gods for that matter, to manifest in a particular form outside of you if you are evoking the spirit. Invoking the spirit is obviously going to be one of the most intense ways to interact with these entities, but it's also the most effective as well, because the current that you are resonant with is going to stream into you and then trigger the activation that is required. So what does it feel like to invoke a Great Old One? First of all, it can take on different forms according to where you are in your process. In my view, the Great Old Ones can be quite black and white, in the sense that they can either come through intensely with all guns blazing, or they kind of subtly leak into the field in a way that you can't consciously perceive, because we're dealing with quite incomprehensible forces when we're tapping into these specific spirits. So when I first interacted with the Great Old Ones, it was Cthulhu that I interacted with, and this came through as an intense anger and frustration. Okay, it's like literally came through as a martial energy. That's what Cthulhu is. He's a martial spirit, rules over the spirit, or rules over Mars, or the sphere of Mars, if you're referring to the Lovecraftian gnosis, which is basically the Lovecraftian aspect of Gebura or Golachub. So it means that he brings a very fiery, very direct energy. For me, he came through very, very strongly the first time around, with all of the fireworks that maybe the ego might want from a particular invocation like this spirit. So I tapped into this spirit, came through intensely, and I could feel a clear difference to another type of dark matter spirit, like an infernal, for example. This energy literally came through and literally felt like it was prodding different aspects of my body and system to awaken different things within. The first time around, it was very intense. I came out of that invocation feeling extremely frustrated, with a lot of repressed anger and anger for the world that came through to the surface as a result of this invocation. But then the second time I tapped into Cthulhu, the energy was much more gentle, but then interacted with me after in the dream state. And this is often the case with Lovecraftian entities, because they are so incomprehensible and very much symbolic of those liminal spaces, the repressed cities slash abandoned cities, buried underneath the ocean, asleep, things like that. It's all symbolic of interacting within a more astral slash dream space. So a good way to interact with the Great Old Ones is to actually journey to them astrally. So you can bring in the spirit and then actually practice what you could call, or what S. Connolly would call, demonic ascension, where you basically journey up into or down into that given realm to interact with that spirit in the astral plane. Or you can have the intention to interact with them in the dream state. Again, they can take on very symbolic forms within the dream state as well. They might not necessarily come through as direct primordial beings, they may do, but they may take on given archetypes that are mirroring the given qualities of that spirit back to you. So these spirits interact with you much more within the dream state than other types of dark matter energies, because of their nature, okay? They are in that sort of liminal space. The hidden cities of the Necronomicon that are hidden under the ocean, or said to be hidden in forgotten places around the earth, are very much symbolic of remembering your true nature, okay? The original city, okay? The old place of origin where you used to dwell when you were a primordial intelligence, okay? And in coming into this body, in coming into this tangible experience, You've come here, if you're guided towards working with beings like the Great Old Ones, you haven't come here to dwell within a pre-constructed mundane world. You've come here to deconstruct the pre-constructed mundane world and actually remember who you are underneath all of that and find your true primordial intelligence and nature from within your physical, tangible body. Okay, so beings like the Great Old Ones, because of how incomprehensible they are, they they don't actually get as much attention as other types of darker occult practices like the Qliphoth or Infernals or beings like that. Okay, Infernals tend to be a lot more attractive, for people who are either on a trauma integration journey or for people who are going into it with superficial means or trying to make money or things like that. They tend to be a much more attractive option, but because of how incomprehensible the Great Old Ones are, as well as the other beings within the Necronomicon Gnosis, it's it's not really a very attractive concept for many people purely because of how incomprehensible these beings are and what they really represent. Okay, many people within the collective consciousness are not in a place where they are ready to process what these beings are going to inevitably bring to the surface when you interact with them. As I said, you're going to the source of your generational line and then basically triggering a chain reaction, and all of your generational trauma, if you interact with these beings properly, is going to start to flow through your conscious mind, and you're going to have to allow yourself to be a vessel for these exiled aspects of you. Okay, in order to really access your true primordial power and extraterrestrial gnosis that is offered by the Great Old Ones, you have to first allow yourself to be a vessel for the repressed parts of you. You have to weaken the veil so that these energies and repressed aspects of your inner child can actually come through and feel safe to come through. And this has many different factors that need to be taken into consideration, such as the sanctuary around you, okay, with all types of advanced occult work like this that is this dismantling. It's important that you have a sanctuary around you to allow your inner child to feel safe. It doesn't mean having loads of people around you, but it means like being able to use the external world, being able, if you're in a relationship or you're in that kind of Scarlet Woman like partnership, or you're, somebody who has multiple partners, then it's being able to use those as mirrors, or being in relationship dynamics that are ultimately going to make your inner child feel safe and are not going to trigger the same sort of generational wounds, or allowing yourself to actually be held by the world around you, which for many, if they've experienced a lot of trauma, is quite a hard thing to do. When you're tapping into energies that are as expansive as this, even Qliphothic energies, maybe even Sephirothic energies as well, even though it's light matter, it's going to bring a lot of stuff to the surface. And the whole purpose of this work, particularly with the Great Old Ones, the whole purpose of this work is to bring these energies into your vessel so that you can process and alchemize them. And if you're not adequately prepared for that, then it's going to be a hellish process. Okay, it's going to be a process that is going to be very hard to integrate. And many people who do interact with these forces do fall into nihilism because they don't have the necessary foundation and sanctuary in their day-to-day life to be able to comprehend all of this trauma that's going to come through to the surface. So naturally, what many people do when they interact with these forces initially, and I also have experience with this myself, is interacting with these forces, bringing the energy in, and then being completely unprepared for the generational trauma that is inevitably going to flood through to the surface. So any type of dark matter spirit, daemon, Great Old One, particularly these Great Old Ones and Lovecraftian entities, you have to understand that going into them with a superficial intention is a very stupid thing to do. Okay, like people who want to go into it to become more psychic, or going into it with the outer layer of wanting this extraterrestrial power without actually being willing to shift the karmic weight and integrate the trauma that's required for you to actually gain access to that gnosis. Okay, and with these beings, they do not give a flying shit about anything or about how you comprehend or interact with these spirits. Okay, if you're inviting these Lovecraftian beings in, what you're doing with the Great Old Ones is that you are awakening the most dormant aspects of your generational line. Okay, and it's literally like you're going and waking up all of the zombies that are stored within your lineage, and they're going to start to flood through to you, and either they will feed on you or you will feed on them and alchemize them and take them as a part of you. So with these beings, they will awaken a lot of this dormant energy and a lot of this dormant trauma, and you need to be prepared to deal with it. This is the thing with the Great Old Ones, okay? Sometimes the Great Old Ones can even be more intense than the Outer Gods. Even though the Outer Gods are more expansive, the Great Old Ones are closer, technically closer to humanity, so they're easier to comprehend by nature. The Great Old Ones are much easier to comprehend energetically and psychologically. Even though they're still very difficult to comprehend, they're much closer to the human vibration than that of Yog-Sothoth or Nyarlathotep or Azathoth or the other kind of outer gods that are outside of the multiverse. These are literally who you were before, archetypal energies for who you were before. In Lovecraftian stories, these beings are waiting for the opportunity to break through and take claim over the world once again. But this, again, is symbolic of your true primordial nature, your true primal essence that is wanting to flood through to the surface of your being. They are fascinating, beautiful, but you do need preparation. Okay, you can also embark on a type, it's similar to Cliffothic or Sephirothic path working, where you actually go to these beings to actually transcend the zodiac or transcend the planetary gateways. I'm going to be uploading a system of initiation through the planetary gateways using the Great Old Ones and the Outer Gods to my Patreon within the next few weeks, and there's already a system on there for transcending the zodiac via the Lovecraftian gnosis, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. But there are many different ways, is what I'm trying to say, of interacting with these beings, okay? In actually through invocation or through actually transcending various planetary gateways that these spirits can grant you access to. But once this ancient energy really starts to activate within you, you're not going to be able to go back. It's going to be a permanent transfiguration. So you've got to be prepared to shed the illusionary aspects of the mundane that was never you in the first place. No exaggeration. So I'm going to read a piece on the Great Old Ones that I posted on Patreon a few weeks ago, just to give clarity on this and explain it further. Okay, so the Great Old Ones represent primordial beings from the black depths of space. They're often referred to as beings that dwell between the stars within the Necronomicon gnosis, okay, much like the Great Old Ones. They are the buried memories of a time before time and the ancient architects of forgotten realities, now bound, sleeping, or scattered across the dimensional realm. So basically what we're referring to here is your trapped primal essence, okay? The Great Old Ones represent the trapped primal essence, okay? The encased kundalini, the encased divinity that's been trapped within a mortal coil and a mundane world that you didn't consciously choose and that you only chose through the karmic imprints that you are holding onto. The Great Old Ones are symbolic of these different primordial aspects of yourself that have been bound upon moving into this multiverse of pre-constructed light matter. Okay. They're not outside of the universe like the outer gods, but they dwell within the universe, embedded within its crust, oceans, dreams, and DNA. Where the outer gods are more transcosmic chaos and anti-cosmic intelligences, the Great Old Ones are cosmic, bound to the multiverse, and distorted intelligences exiled from the stars of light matter and represent the remnants of an alien order that once was. Some see the Great Old Ones as avatars of the outer gods. Okay, so the part that I really want to emphasize there is distorted intelligences exiled from the stars and remnants of an alien order that once was. So when we talk about remnants of an alien order, we're referring to your true extraterrestrial intelligence, okay? The aspects of yourself. We are all hybrid beings somewhat. And in the New Age community, these sort of hybrid beings are even either referred to as the Essassani or maybe even the Pleiadians, Anunnaki. All of these are very valid concepts, but those are light matter intelligences only, okay? Those are what feels safe to the collective consciousness, but basically we're ignoring the fact that we also have primordial extraterrestrial origins as well, and the purpose of these beings is to awaken that primordial intelligence within, and in doing so shed the deepest aspects of your karma and process some of the deepest aspects of your generational trauma. Massive process. The Great Old Ones move by laws alien to mortal understanding, and their agendas, if they have them, are encoded in dreams, symbols, madness, and mutation. So mutation is a theme with these particular intelligences, okay? When we're talking about mutation, we are talking about actually allowing our mundane aspects to mutate into something far bigger and better according to what our soul's essence truly is. So if you imagine like the mutation of the body, or an aspect of the body getting infected with something and then mutating into something bigger, it's basically what that's referring to. The mutating human body is the shifting of one consciousness into another, okay? A mutation takes place basically like when a particular aspect of the body physically gets sort of basically gets taken over by an extraterrestrial energy, and it causes it to then change into a different aspect of what it was before, okay? A more primordial, or on the surface maybe even ugly aspect of what it was before, again symbolic of how we have framed our own divinity as not worthy to feel and embody. Absolutely essential to understand there. Where was I? Yet for the practitioner on the path of Necronomicon Gnosis, these beings are gateways to hidden transmissions of consciousness and ancestral memory, again triggering that chain reaction within the generational line. To work with the Great Old Ones properly is to commit to a path of unearthing pre-human instincts, breaking the illusions of temporal identity, and reactivating connections to ancient stellar intelligences buried beneath millennia of psychic oppression. If the outer gods dissolve and transmute, the Great Old Ones awaken and reclaim. They return us to something older than our sense of self. So again, really emphasizing here the unearthing of pre-human instincts, breaking the illusion of temporal identity, and reactivating connections to ancient stellar intelligences. Basically breaking your psychic oppression, breaking your oppression in its deepest and rawest form, particularly tied to generational oppression, okay? We're still carrying the energy of our generational line by default, and this is one of the most powerful, intense, and potentially dangerous pursuits of ancestral healing and the transmutation of the trauma within the generational line. So Cthulhu is one of the most well-known Great Old Ones, but also one of the most misunderstood, and he's referred to as the sleeper beneath the ocean, or the sleeper beneath. So I'm just going to read a piece on Cthulhu as well. Cthulhu represents what lies repressed within humanity, the ancient amphibious soul of humanity's cosmic ancestry. He dreams in the black city of the Necronomicon, submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean, waiting for the stars to align and the gates to open once more. This concept is symbolic of humanity's call to primal gnosis, okay? Waiting for the right moment to strike, waiting for the right moment to basically come forth and take claim over the multiverse itself. But again, this is mirrored on a microcosmic level as well as a collective level, macrocosmic level. Okay, so what we're referring to here is the collective and individual call back to your own divinity. There is a primal essence within you that is waiting to be resurrected and brought into the realm of light, matter, and form and integrated. Okay, this is really tied to some of your deepest and most repressed traumas. He dreams in the Black City, submerged beneath the Pacific Ocean, waiting for the stars to align and the gates to open once more. His alchemical nature is submerged in the primal essence as deep ancestral memory trapped beneath the egoic masks. Okay, so true power and potential of the generational lines, not just ET generational lines, but also your physical generational line, and shedding the shell that is binding it together. Okay, that is basically stopping you from tapping into that true power and potential. His current stirs waters of the unconscious, bringing forth strange dreams, cryptic visions, and the resurrection of forgotten aspects of self. Can feel very alien, very strange feeling. He teaches the practitioner to embrace their shadow as a deep inheritance. Cthulhu restructures the practitioner's sense of self, integrating it into a vast pan-dimensional identity that predates humanity altogether. He is a symbol of awakening through pressure, the slow rise of the drowned god within. So the fact that he is submerged is symbolic of the fact that the god within is buried within the primordial waters of the unconscious mind, and we need to undergo the internal apocalypse, the great flood that shows in many ancient esoteric sources, including the Book of Revelations, if we refer to it from a religious standpoint. Again, all deeply symbolic of the resurrection of what dwells within the unconscious mind. The flood needs to take place in order for us to unlock what is buried beneath that primordial water. Okay. So other beings that are also extremely powerful great old ones are Dagon and Hydra, the deep ones, which I'm also going to explain here. Dagon and Mother Hydra are the priests of the ancient lineage. They represent the merging of human and other, as well as representing symbols of hybridization. So whereas Cthulhu accesses deep ancestral memory associated with the ancient extraterrestrial intelligences, this is what creates the merging with these consciousness. Okay. They represent the merging of human and other, as well as representing symbols of hybridization. The deep ones are a process, a mutagenic current that transforms the human soul by reactivating its amphibian pre-human potential. Their temples lie in drowned cities, again, deep unconscious, okay, deep sort of aspects of the collective consciousness that is repressed underneath the deep unconscious or within the deep unconscious. But their work continues in the flesh of those who take these beings as aspects of them. So as you take these beings as aspects of you, you are taking your ancient self as an aspect of you, and you are also taking the entirety of the primordial chaos as an aspect of you as well. The alchemical nature of these beings are the waters of transformation, not like the pure dissolution of Cthulhu, but the more fertile mutation of life into new forms. They represent the aquatic womb of initiatory change, where identity is made fluid and evolution becomes the main drive. Basically meaning the cultivation / gestation of your reality from the space of the true will. Working with them activates deep ancestral codes in the blood, unlocking forgotten lineages and hybrid capacities that transcend modern human limitations. They teach transmutation through corruption and dissolution, the sacred becoming of the monstrous and primal aspects of self, okay? The aspects of self that have been completely villainized and refused. Yig is another one, okay? Yig, the father of serpents. Yig is a Saturnian divinity ruling over the Saturnian sphere, whereas Dagon is more lunar in nature, okay? Much more dream-like and astral in nature. Yig is an extremely aggressive great old one that is going to trigger deep levels of karmic reckoning. So Yig is the reptilian archetypal serpent from which many lesser gods and mythologies descend. He is the custodian of cycles, birth, death, shedding, and rebirth, much like how Saturn is, so Saturnian divinity. Serpentine in both form and nature, Yig speaks in dreams and toxins through visions of ancient deserts and spiraling patterns etched into stone and skin. So the ancient deserts are symbolic of dissolution. Okay, if you've heard of Shugal, ruler of the abyss, he's referred to often as the howler of the desert. Okay. The alchemical nature of Yig represents the coiled power of latent transformation and is associated strongly with the Kundalini. Okay, the Kundalini serpent. In alchemical terms, he is the Kundalini of the Necronomicon gnosis, the living fire sleeping in the root, which, when awakened, uncoils and devours the falsehood from within. He governs the cyclic initiations of death and rebirth, very Saturnian in nature, as well as visceral bodily processes. His wisdom is encoded in venom and vision, in dreams of shedding old skin and merging with the forgotten wisdom of reptiles, ancestors, and desert spirits. So merging with your reptilian nature, okay? Very kind of draconian in nature, okay? It's very similar, this current, to that of the draconian current and the cliffotic currents, unlocking that pure primal serpentine energy from within. Through Yig, the practitioner learns to transmute fear into knowing and mundane poison into power. Okay, a lot of these primordial beings refer to symbolic poison that when you interact with them, poisons the mundane consciousness as you know it. Okay, so there are many other great old ones. Those are the primary three, and also the primary three that rule over the given planetary spheres. So you've got Dagon that rules over the lunar sphere, you've got Cthulhu that rules over Mars, and you've also got Yig who rules over Saturn, with the four outer gods that also rule over the planets in between. Okay, so interacting with these beings is a very intense alchemical pursuit that you need to be prepared for, and you ultimately need to understand that this is a lot around deep ancestral healing, and basically ancestral healing on steroids times two. Plus aliens, accessing deep ancestral knowledge, but in doing so, being able to tap into and alchemize some of your deepest and most repressed traumas. So I think that's everything that I needed to speak about in today's topic. Be sure to check out my Patreon, as there is an entire Necronomicon Gnosis section on there, link in description. But for now, thank you guys. Hit like and subscribe if this video is helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.